Trying to be doing that bullshit. On some good news. It's. So are we starting? Let's just start.
Let's just start. I mean, I think we'll
Marvel done snapped me again. They done snapped me again. I find myself playing Marvel Snap way too much. You know,
it's a good game, bro.
It's a good game. It's a great game, and it doesn't take too long to play a game. So you go, I mean, maybe a game takes the maximum a game can take. Like if your opponent is just stalling on every, no one does it, but if they were just a complete asshole and wanted to stall on every turn, the longest the game can take is like 5 minutes.
Right.
But if everybody's on the ball and playing quick, you know, a game can be over in 30 seconds. Mm-hmm. You know, I've seen, or you can make a motherfucker quit real quick. I've seen that happen. Sometimes you play one card and people are like, "Fuck," you know. So it doesn't take long. You can play it right quick, and you know it's the first game that's ever been on my phone that I play more than chess. Even Slay the Spire, I didn't play more than I played chess. I played Marvel Snap more than anything.
We got to play chess, Brian. I haven't played. I used to play a decent amount of chess, like back in college.
Yeah,
well, I was okay.
Well, the thing is, I'm not
great.
I'm not great at chess. I'm pretty good. But what chess does for me is, because I like to play the 5-minute games, and because you have to move quickly to conserve time, I like to play in the green room because it makes my mind go make quick decisions. You know what I mean? It puts me in the mind state that I like to be in on stage, where my mind is just thinking fast and making calculations fast. So
chess is one of the, so you know like fast brain, slow brain, right? Like how humans have evolved to have sort of they talked about a lot about this in the book Nudge, and I think there's also a book, ironically, called Snap or something like that. And basically you can divide the way that the brain works through problems into two different methods. One is like a very slow method, but it leads to more accurate outcomes.
Okay.
And then you also have a very fast part of your brain that reacts very quickly. And what's interesting is the faster one you would think would be more economical. Like that's why it's faster, but it's actually not the case. It's actually you use way more mental faculties for the fast thing, but your brain is taking into account a whole bunch of factors that you are not conscious of. And one of the things that they studied people who were fire chiefs and had been fire chiefs for like, 10, 15 years. And how they could intuitively know, oh, we need to get out of here right now because this floor is about to collapse. Like that kind of stuff. And they can't articulate the specific things necessarily that they picked up on, but their brain did. Right?
Right.
And what's interesting is that chess is one of those games that uses both fast and slow, because you can sit there and just work through, a ton of different outcomes if you had infinite time. But when you play speed chess, or even when you just have the standard clock, it makes it so that you do have to rely a little bit more on your intuition and the patterns that you have developed from playing, thousands and thousands of games.
It puts you in the mind state where you're right. Like because that's the thing. Like when I'm on stage, a lot of times I'm thinking while I'm speaking.
Right. You
know what I mean? It's like the rehearsed part, or the part that I have down pat. Once I say the first couple words, the rest is not automatic, but it's on pretty much on autopilot. And so basically I can take little 2-second breaks to think about like what's going on in the room, what the next line is, what I can connect, what I said earlier that I could possibly connect to, whatever. So I always find myself, but sometimes I can't be in that state. I guess you would call it flow state, where it's like I'm spinning all the plates. I'm paying attention to what's in the room. I know my set good material. I know my new material. I know stuff I could slip in, or I make some kind of connection that I didn't make before. And sometimes it's like just stick to the fucking script. And sometimes it's like, and this happens this is why I don't mind being high on stage, but I don't like to get high right before I go on stage, because if I'm in that mode and then the weed kicks in, it's like a reset. It's like all the plates fall, and then I'm like, fuck, So I either have to already be high before I go up, or I just don't get high.
You can achieve that state in either pre-established state.
Exactly.
But it disrupts that flow if you switch from basically sober to high or whatever.
Right, exactly.
In the middle of it.
Yeah.
Fucks up the continuity.
So when your wife says, "Are you playing Marvel Snap?" Is it like
she's catching me? Not really.
No, but is it like a Marvel Snap again? Or is it like a teasing, like, "Oh, you playing Marvel Snap, huh?"
It's more of a teasing, like, because, well, that's the thing. It's like, I mean, my wife and I play a lot of board games and stuff. She's into games as well. She doesn't play video games very much.
Okay. Are y'all like a Settlers of Catan family?
We play a lot of, have you ever played Dice Throne?
No.
It's Dice Throne. Dice Throne is dope. It's basically like Battle Yahtzee.
Okay.
Like you have it's a roll and write game, which roll and write game is like Yahtzee's the classic roll and write game, right? Where it's like you roll dice and then you choose which ones to keep and then which ones to re-roll. And you have a certain number of re-rolls and you're trying to get a certain hand.
Oh, okay.
Dice, right? Dice Throne is basically that, but you have like characters that are, the original game is like archetypes, like gunslinger versus barbarian or whatever. We have all the Marvel ones. So we have like Black Panther versus Captain Marvel, or Doctor Strange versus Black Widow, or whatever. And you have a playmat with different attacks on it, and you're trying to reduce your opponent to 0 life.
And it's just one-on-one?
It's the main way to play is one-on-one. They do have like 3-player games. They have a version for 4, 5, 6 players.
Yeah,
I mostly play one-on-one.
I don't own any board games, but whenever my friends, because we at that age now where like some people we do that at get-togethers where people are like, "Hey, we gonna get together and play." We play this one called, I think it's called Code Names.
Oh, that game's dope. That game is awesome.
Yeah, but it's one of those things where it's like I like playing a board game is never my idea, but I never regret it. Hardly ever. I hardly ever regret it. Yeah. So
I mean, we've just come out of the other side of sort of a renaissance of board games. Last 10, 15 years, there's been a lot of really good games have come out.
Really good board games?
Really good board games.
I'm surprised that that's still such a thriving industry, too. Because
I mean, it's having trouble right now because it's so expensive to print stuff.
Why?
And just because the cost of paper has gone way, 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 way up.
Why?
Because
of shipping?
Well, number one, because of
Russia.
The shipping, the disruption in the supply chain, but then also just as certain countries, like a lot of things are getting more expensive now because countries like Bangladesh, Indonesia, India, China, that used to mainly just be a cheap source of labor to produce products for the US and Europe. Now, because we've been pumping money into them for 30 years for labor and for supplies, now it's raised up the lower classes.
Yeah, they have a middle class now.
They now have a middle class, and so now we're competing with them for the materials and the labor that they used to supply to us for pennies on the dollar. Right.
Right.
So It's the same issue with like a lot of the metals that are required for like smartphones and other pieces of technology, right? It's like, it's one thing when we can just economically colonize countries in Africa that have those minerals and then ship them to Asia where they can be put into phones that can be sold to Americans. But once Africans have enough money that they can buy their own phones, now we're competing with them for the same materials, right?
Yeah.
So it raises the prices of them.
It reminds me of that. I don't know what it was, like a video that came out years ago when they where they had these African people that pick cocoa beans,
mm-hmm.
and they let them taste chocolate for the first time, and they had no idea. They had no idea what the beans were for. They were like, "Why the fuck they want these?" And they, you know, and then he gave them. I mean, and it blew their fucking mind. I mean, imagine being like 35 and never having tasted chocolate before, and then to find out the beans you've been picking and selling get turned into that.
Right. Because the cocoa bean's not good by itself.
No, in fact, isn't it poisonous? Like if you
think the shell is poisonous.
Yeah, I think if you just ate a cocoa bean, you'd probably die. But I don't know if that's true.
I think this, because the cocoa bean itself is kind of like the seed and it has like a husk, and I think that there's a poisonous, like the rind of the husk or something is poisonous. I could be wrong about that.
Oh, Rob, dude, I don't want to. I do want to. But I hate to randomly change the subject, but I have an article for you, and I purposely didn't put it in the pool because I want this to be a surprise to your brain.
Okay.
Like you'll see. So I kept this in Pocket. Pocket's great, by the way. I wish they would sponsor us because I use it every fucking day. So I'm going to read you the headline to this article, and you tell me what you think this article is about. Okay. Woman with Down syndrome loses abortion law appeal. So what do you think is going on in this article? Like, what do you think this woman wanted, and what do you think she won?
Let me break it down. It sounds to me like there is a woman with Down syndrome
mm-hmm.
who was pregnant.
Okay.
And that she wanted to have an abortion.
Okay.
And she lives in a state where abortion is severely restricted or perhaps even outright illegal at a very early period.
Okay.
And she was disallowed from having that abortion, and then she sued.
Okay, so this is not in the United States.
Oh, okay.
At least I'm guessing that because she's from Coventry. That sounds like a British thing.
That sounds British to me.
Yeah. But no, it's not that at all.
Okay.
So the abortion law in this place makes an exception for if the child will be born with a defect, and specifically mentions things like Down syndrome and all these other things.
Okay.
And this lady wants that exception taken off because it defines birth defects like Down syndrome as defects. So it makes her feel less than. So she's not pregnant. She doesn't want an abortion. She just wants a woman that is pregnant with a baby that will have Down syndrome to have the baby, because if she can get rid of the baby, it makes her less than. You understand what I'm saying?
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, I get it.
Which is crazy. That's crazy as shit. This is what I'm talking about. It's this idea that this idea that nothing is a disability. Nothing is undesirable. You know, I dealt with this, and because listen, there are things that which people traditionally considered disabilities that the differently abled label applies to, right? Such as deafness. I had a deaf teacher when I took ASL in college, and the instructor was deaf, and I remember someone referring to deafness as a disability, and she got really upset and explained that because deaf people have their own communities and their own culture and all this other stuff, and a lot of them would not choose to hear if they could. You know what I mean? Like the ocular, because we were all debating about, because they have these ocular implants.
Cochlear.
I'm sorry, yeah. What did I say? Ocular. Yeah, cochlear implants. That's what they're called. And they and there are situations and there are places where like you can put them in a baby. You can put one on a baby before they have a choice, right? So they can be normal or whatever. And and the deaf community is against that because they're like, that's a decision they should get to make as an adult.
Right.
Because they have this whole community and support system and all this other stuff. Anyway, so when you say differently abled, okay, maybe it applies to that. But most other disabilities is like, it's something that like no one would choose that. Like no one that's missing both of their legs. If you walked up and was like, "Hey man, we got these new legs," they wouldn't be like, "Nah, I'm good. I'm in the community." No, it's like, you know what I'm saying? It's like,
yeah.
And it's like, so, because listen, I get it that like.
Wait, can I? I want to bring up one small thing before we move on.
Okay, go ahead.
That particular point, because I think. So one of the things that you're talking about is there's a distinction between the medical model of disability and the social model of disability, right?
Right.
So just the Cliff's notes on that is medical model is the way that most able-bodied people sort of think of disability being, where it's like there's a way that the human body works, and when you deviate from that to a significant degree, you have a medical condition that reduces your ability to like live life normally.
Right.
And therefore you have a medical disability. And then what you're talking about with like the deaf community is you can perfectly imagine a society where no one could hear, and that society works perfectly fine, perfectly well, just as well as one where people can hear. And there are communities in the real world where it does work just as fine. There are whole schools and institutions where everybody's deaf and everything works perfectly, right?
Right.
That's the social model of disability, where it's like, well, disability is not a deviation from some like essential characteristic that humans are supposed to have. It's that how is society created? So society is created for people who can hear, right?
Right.
Society is created for people who are right-handed. Society is created for people who are sighted, etc. With somebody who's missing their legs, you can look at that as like, well, anybody who had their legs and had their legs removed would want to have their legs back, and that's probably true. But you could also look at that as, well, it's not so much that they're missing their legs, it's that they're a wheelchair user. And wheelchair user is a much broader category. And you can imagine a society that was built for people who use wheelchairs as opposed to people who use legs to get around.
That's a good one.
So,
right. But
so anyway, you were talking about, you're making a distinction though.
Yeah, but okay, so using your same analogy though, imagine a society full of people with Down syndrome. That's going to fall apart pretty quickly.
Maybe.
So that has to count as, like, this is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Once the baby pops out of your pussy, you have to go, I love it anyway. It's special. It's all these other things. But if once people find out they pregnant, you go, the first people go, do you want a boy or a girl? People go, I just want them to be healthy. Mm-hmm. That's what. So it's like, yeah, it's like. And here's the other thing too. I don't think this Down syndrome woman, I don't think she's doing this. It's one of those things where it's her mother.
This is a test case.
No, I mean, it's another person.
No, that's what I mean. This is some organization was looking for a woman like her so that she would have standing and they could bring this case on her behalf.
Yeah, she's being used by these fucking religious fanatics to make it even harder for a woman to have access to an abortion. It ain't none of your fucking business what happens to somebody else's pussy. I'm sorry. Or their body at all. It's none of your fucking business. So it's weird that
ultimately what's wrong here is that there shouldn't have to be an exception. Right?
Yeah, like this well, that's because I made the same exact assumption you did. When I saw the headline, I was like, oh, well, that's going to clearly be like my mind was creating all kinds of scenarios. I was like, oh, that's a woman with Down syndrome is like fighting for her right to have a child. like maybe she's being forced to have an abortion, so her baby isn't, or maybe she wants an abortion and can't get one, or whatever. You know what I mean?
Doesn't this just give lie to the whole framework of like a fetus is a precious child whose right to life is inviolate? And it's like, because how can you make that argument? And then because these exceptions were not put in by like pro-abortion people. These exceptions are put in by anti-abortion people so that they can get anti-abortion legislation passed. You know what I'm saying?
Right, exactly.
Every time they say, well, but the law makes exceptions for rape and incest and disability, right?
Right.
Or birth defects or whatever. And it's like every time they do that, they're not doing that because they really care about those issues. They're doing that because they know if they don't make exceptions for that, 98% of normal people are going to be like, well, fuck no, we're not going to force some woman to bring to term the like child of her rapist or her brother. Or
even though
father.
In some places they are doing that. Some places in America, we're doing that, by the way. It's like, how can you with a straight face make that? See, this is my problem with religion, is it's religion, astrology, numerology, all these things that allow people to think illogically. It's like without, because when you point out how much that doesn't make sense, their response is, well, my God says, and that's all they have to do. They don't have to make sense. They don't have to prove their point. They don't have to have statistics or nothing. They just get to go, hey, man, that's just my beliefs. This is what God says. Or, and to me, that's no different than when motherfuckers used to like, throw sticks up in the air, and depending on how they land, they would go to war that morning. It's like, you don't have to make any sense. You would be like, sir, we outnumber 10-1. We can't go to battle. We waiting for reinforcements. Like, listen, the sticks landed. We going out there. You know what I'm saying? The gods have spoken. It's like you don't. It completely erases. It's the reason why, like, somebody that's an expert in their field that's completed thousands of studies and published thousands of papers. It's religion and astrology, all this supernatural bullshit is the only reason why somebody that's just on Twitter, somebody that's just like they sell pet rocks or something, they're on the level with Neil deGrasse Tyson. They get to debate,
right?
They get to debate Christopher Hitchens on the same level. Like, how many times have I seen? Oh man, I used to love Christopher Hitchens just because I just love him going to a church and debating a rabbi or something, or like Richard Dawkins, where it's like, oh, this motherfucker's been studying biology for 30 plus years, and you're just a pastor. You don't know shit about any of that, and y'all are debating on equal footing. Like his, you know what I'm saying? It's like your flock doesn't see his expertise as anything special. You know what I'm saying?
That's like, yeah. Well, I mean, I remember,
but he would win a lot. Like people would boo him at first, but then towards the end he would start getting applause. He was just so good at. He was sort of the opposite of Sam Harris because he would come off as a little more. He never lost his cool, not very often, but he came off as a little more smarmy and arrogant. It's the British accent too.
Yeah, he's a little hoity-toity.
Yeah.
When he's in the debate,
but he was also a little drunk, so it balanced out
Dawkins?
a little bit. No, Christopher Hitchens. He's dead.
Christopher
now.
Hitchens.
Christopher Hitchens. No, I never seen Dawkins drunk.
I don't. It doesn't seem his vibe. It's funny, like all these, because they're like the four horsemen, right?
They used to
Hitchens,
be. Yeah.
Hitchens, Dawkins, Harris, and Dennett. Was he the fourth?
No, I think it was no. I could be wrong, but I think it was Dawkins, Harris. Hold on, Dawkins, Harris, Hitchens, and Randy, the Amazing Randy.
No,
No?
definitely not. No. For Horsemen, Atheism.
Wait a minute, am I saying the right person? Amazing Randy?
Yeah, I mean,
He was a debunker, right?
He was a debunker. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. R.I.P. That dude was awesome.
He was fucking great.
Yeah, major figures include Richard Dawkins, Sam Harris, Christopher Hitchens, and Daniel Dennett.
Okay, Daniel Dennett. I don't know anything about Dennett.
Daniel Dennett is a neuroscientist, I believe.
Should I buy one of his books?
Yeah, his books are good. He's had an interesting debate that's been long running with Sam Harris about the existence or lack thereof of free will. And
I've read Sam Harris's paper on free will.
Yeah, I tend to come down on Daniel Dennett's side about it, even though he is. I think his perspective on free will is a little more nuanced. I don't think that anything Sam Harris says about free will is necessarily wrong, but I think that Daniel Dennett reframes it around what free will actually is, which it's not that sort of libertarian free will that you could have chosen otherwise, but it's that the concept of free will is so embedded in the human conception of what other humans are, is that it exists nonetheless as a sort of kind of like a shared concept that we need, that has become part of the substrate.
Well, let's fill everyone in. Sam Harris's stance on free will is basically, and correct me if I fucked this up at all, his stance on free will is basically that you are a biological computer that was given, for lack of a better term, given code, the moment you came into being, and everything is inevitable, right? Like you're no more choosing than your smartphone is choosing. It's like right. You're a computer that, when given input, will put out a specific output because of the arrangement of all your neurons and all this other stuff. You are going to make a specific choice, and you don't really have a choice in the matter, right? But he isn't making the argument that you aren't responsible for your choices. That's pretty much that's not. I'm not doing a good job at summarizing his argument, but that's basically what it is. And so you're saying Dennett is saying free will may not exist in the strictest terms, but the concept exists among us, and so it is real. Like the same way money's real, where it's like we've made up money.
Yes.
But we've all decided that it's real. So, and we use it so it's real, and a motherfucker would still chop your head off for $1,000. You know what I'm saying? It's right. Like, so it is.
And when it comes to philosophy, when it comes to law, when it comes to just social interactions with each other, we still need to act as if people have agency, because we need to delineate between when somebody is actually like forced to do something by external factors versus forced to do something by internal factors.
Right. We can't live as though there is no free will, because then no one's responsible for anything. That doesn't make any sense.
The concepts of, so the distinction here is they're both there's people who believe in determinism versus free will. So you were predetermined to make the choice that you made, right?
Right.
But the distinction is on the level of compatibilism, which is whether or not determinism is compatible with a notion of agency. And so Sam Harris believes, no, they're not really compatible, because if your choices are predetermined, then because your reactions are predetermined, right? It's just external input comes in, processes by the computer inside your head, and then it spits out output, right? That's deterministic. You don't have any true agency. And Daniel Dennett is not necessarily disagreeing with that process stripped of context, but he is saying that process is so complex that it's not predictable, number one. And the lack of predictability presents us with the illusion of agency. And that illusion is so powerful that we have evolved both physically, like as a species, but also our societies and institutions have evolved in such a way that we kind of have this assumption of agency. So we have to live so it's a way to sort of say like, yes, human beings are ultimately computers, if you want to use that, or robots, if you want to use that model. And yet we have to live and think as if humans have agency.
Right. Yeah, those all make sense to me.
Yeah, they both make sense.
I also love Sam's paper on truth or on lying. I forget which one it was.
It's interesting that he mostly focuses on lying and why you shouldn't lie as opposed to why you should tell the truth.
Right.
I do think those two things are distinct.
Okay, yeah. This is a big brain episode, everybody.
Yeah.
Rob loves these. Did you notice how we had spicy Rob in the morning, and as soon as this nigga got to start talking smart, he fucking livened up.
It's coffee.
He got a cup of coffee and started and was like, "I'm going to unleash my whole vocabulary on you, motherfuckers." No, we love it. We love Rob with access to his full vernacular.
When I'm at KOKen times 500.
Yeah, see, I used the word vernacular just now, but I'm not 100% certain if I used it correctly, and that is how everything should be. I'm not as confident in my intelligence as Rob is, but I don't have a degree. So that's the thing. I don't want to lead people astray. I went to college, but I didn't finish, and it's because I started with philosophy, and you should not do that. You shouldn't take no philosophy classes till you 2 years into college. Because if you start thinking about college logically, you're gonna be like, I should get the fuck out of here. You know what I'm saying? So you can't you can't start with philosophy because you're gonna start being like, well, wait a minute. Well, what is the point in all? Nah, don't do that. Don't do what I did.
I have a speaking of philosophy, I have a book recommendation for everybody, for you as well. I mean, but you might have read it already.
What?
It's called The Existentialist Cafe.
The Existentialist. You know what? I'm gonna get that on Audible real quick. I think I got a credit this month.
By Sarah Bakewell, I believe is her name.
The Existentialists Cafe by Sarah Bakewell. Yeah.
Yeah, Sarah Bakewell. This book is excellent. It is essentially it's about Simone de Beauvoir and Jean-Paul Sartre and their whole crew from the mid 20th century. And it gives sort of it explains existentialist philosophy and its place in philosophy, like the history of philosophy, but it does it by talking about the context in which existentialist philosophy came about, which was the lives of these people in Germany and France before, during, and after the Second World War, and it traces the intellectual development back through phenomenology, that was the hot shit in the 19th century, was phenomenology.
Okay, yeah, I think a lot of stuff came. World War II birthed a lot of, because then that also birthed like nihilism and.
Well, some stuff came out of nihilism came before, because a lot of stuff came out of World War One.
Oh yeah, well, war.
Wars tend to do that shit.
Yeah, and it's weird. It's weird too how like a lot of religion comes from. Like when you think because what it all does is it's a lot of philosophies or ways of thinking come from the circumstances in which people were living when those things came about, right?
Right.
Like that's why you got like Buddhism, and Hinduism that like tell you that like desire creates suffering.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so you should not want things. You should live your life simple. That came out of a time where people didn't have shit. You know, like people were poor as fuck and starving, and it was like the way to deal with that is to be like, oh, but this is the righteous way to be living, is to not want.
Right.
You know, and it's not to say that things from those philosophies are not useful. There's useful things in all religions and philosophies. You know, but it's if you go to the beginning of every religion, you can see the connection between how the majority of the people are living in that area in that time, and how that affected, you know, while the religion was being created, how it affected what's virtuous and what's acceptable and what, you know, that's those sorts of things.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's what's interesting about this book, Existentialist Cafe, is that phenomenology and existentialism, and then leading into absurdism, can be very, very confusing to read in the actual texts because they are devoid of the context that gave rise to them. So you're like, I don't really know what they're talking about. But when you learn those concepts in the context of what was happening in the lives that these people were living and the societies that they existed in, it makes it a lot easier to understand what they're actually talking about.
Right.
And it makes it easier to learn what the actual philosophy was that they were promoting.
Yeah. And I think it's way easier to do that with philosophy than with religion necessarily, just because it's like, I feel like, you know, anytime you're at the end of a world war, it seems pretty logical that you're like, well, the shit we were doing ain't working. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Yep. It's like, we keep being, because like, has there ever been a year, or I don't think there's never not been war.
No, there's always wars.
There's always wars. And, you know, and it's wild too, you know, the major wars, you know, happen cyclically. But it's like there's a lesson that we haven't learned and I don't even know what it is, honestly.
Brian, you're getting way too close to riding a Gundam right now.
Riding a Gundam?
Yeah, that's what Gundam is always about, right?
Oh, I don't know. I'm not a Gundam guy.
You don't watch Gundam? Oh shit.
No, well, should I?
Oh, you've just unlocked another nerdy Rob.
Yeah, you know, it's one of those things that's been near me for a long time. It's been in my peripheral. I just haven't looked that way yet because it's also one of those things that it's there's so much to it that I feel like so behind, and it to me it just seems like a giant thing that I would have to tackle, and I just haven't had the time yet.
But fundamentally, what Gundam is about, and I'm sure people are going to at me in the comments and say that's not what Gundam's about, but this is what I think Gundam is about. Gundam is always about what is the nature of man? Is the nature of man peaceful or warlike?
No, it isn't.
And so you have a thesis and antithesis, right? The synthesis that Gundam comes to is that, well, the nature of man is to be locked in a cycle of war, peace, and revolution. And
oh damn, that's depressing.
Yeah, well, but I think it's true. I mean, even when you look at like the history of science, the history of nation states, the history of wars, history of philosophy and religion, that's what we do. I mean, I just watched a video by there's a video essay by the YouTube channel Struthless, which is a great channel. I'll link it in the show notes. But it was the history of fonts and typefaces.
Okay.
Going back to like, you know, going all the way back to like prior to cuneiform, right? So going back to like 8500 BC. And what's interesting is, especially after the invention of set type or movable type, you see this slingshot back and forth between modernism and radicalism, between typeface. So what happens is people are like, we're going to do this. This is going to be the main way. Like, this is the way the Romans did it. This is the way that the newspaper of record is going to do it. We have all of these like serif fonts. It's legible, yada, yada, yada. And then people do that for a little while, and that's the hot shit. And then people are like, you know what? Fuck that. Like, that's bourgeois, or that is monarchist or whatever. And you have like Dadaism, or you have New Romanticism or something, and people start doing really experimental things with typefaces and using punctuation as letters and all this crazy stuff. It's very punk. And then that gets co-opted by institutions, right? That becomes cool. So advertisers start making their shit look like punk or looking like grunge or whatever.
Right, and then people catch on, and they're like...
And people catch on, and then now the rebel thing is, well, now we're going to reject this like false rebelliousness, and we're going to make it look modern again. Well,
I like a thing that you will, because I think we're glossing over the thing, because here's my theory on why that happens it's kids, because as kids become teenagers, what's cool is they define what's cool as the opposite of what their parents think is cool.
Yes.
So it's like it's when you become old, it's not that like you hate young people's music. It's that they are making it so that you don't like it, because that's what makes it cool. Like it's not. It doesn't automatically make it cool, but a prerequisite to cool is that you don't like it. It's my thing. Right. You know what I mean? And so it you know, that's why things repeat themselves. You know, that's why like fashion skips a generation. You know, like now the way we dressed in the 90s, our parents were like, "What the fuck are you doing?"
Right.
Right. And then the new kids came out and it's like, "That's corny." And now the new kids now are like, "It's vintage." Yeah. You know what I mean? And it was like a lot of our shit was vintage from the 70s. Like the kids that grew up with kids in the 90s, you know, like remember when bell-bottom jeans was a thing? Yeah. It was like bell-bottoms were popular in the 70s. They was corny in the 80s. And they came back in the 90s. And, you know, so it's like it's always going to be like that. Where it's like your kids just don't want you to think, they don't want you to be cool with everything they're doing. Because they don't have that. I think there's an inherent need to rebel for you to feel like you have agency. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It's like the moment you even, because I think almost right away kids are like, I want to do what I want, but you can't.
Yes.
And then right around when you're a teenager, it's like, oh, I can do what I want, or I can be defiant. I'm big enough to be defiant because no one can pick me up and put me in a cage or, you know, whatever. And so I feel like I'm kind of getting lost in the weeds here, but my point is just that I think it's a biological imperative that you rebel at least to some degree.
Well, it's why it's good. I hope humanity never figures out a way to become immortal, because as soon as we do, that's a wrap. Because the
latest episode of Star Talk is about that, by the way.
Oh, really?
About whether we'll ever be immortal. Yeah,
I'll have to listen to that, but. I mean, I don't think we ever will be immortal, but I also think
oh, yes, we will. Yeah. The technology already, we're very close to being able to, back up our brains digitally.
That would not be real immortality, Brian.
No?
It's a philosophical, well I'm going to get there, but you've heard the phrase "science progresses one funeral at a time," right?
Damn, that's dope. That's cold, and that's probably true of society in general.
Yeah, society in general. Because in science, what ends up happening is like you have the things we know. You have because people and I, myself included, we talk about science. So science is not a body of knowledge. Science is a method for achieving knowledge, right?
Right.
And it's like That's true, but it's also not the whole story, because science is also a body of knowledge. It's like,
well, it has institutions that are run by men with egos.
Yeah.
And yeah.
And so when you say science, you can mean the process, you can mean the body of knowledge, you can mean the institutions that create and preserve those bodies of knowledge, et cetera. And what ends up happening is, you have these wonderkins, the upcoming generation are interested in science. They go to school, they get training in science, and they're being trained by the older generation, by the professors, right? By their mentors. The mentors have the things that they think that they know. Right. And they will fight tooth and nail to preserve the validity of the things that they think that they know. Right.
Because if the thing you worked your whole life to master is no longer relevant, then you ain't shit.
Right. Yeah. So the younger generation, they are basically, when they create new knowledge, what they're doing is they are upending the established or assumed knowledge that exists from the older generation. But so you have this tension, once again, war, revolution, peace, you have that same pattern where eventually the older people die and the younger people who have the new ways of seeing the world, they take over those positions, right? In the institution.
I feel like we should do this like the Vulcans. It's like, yo, you hit a certain age, you're dead. Like, we kill you.
You're gone.
Yeah. It's like you take enough resources.
The Kree superintelligence from Marvel Comics.
Yeah.
When you die, you get added to Supremor.
Or maybe what we do is we colonize Mars, right? And then when you 70, we send you over there.
But I don't want to let this go by. I do not believe that if you were to be able to download or copy your brain to a machine, that I don't believe that is you any more than a high quality scan of the Mona Lisa is the Mona Lisa. It's a copy. Now, you might be able to produce a copy of yourself.
Well, it may not be literally you, but it's effectively you.
But what do I care? That's just a copy of me. That's like saying if you have two twins and one of them dies, they live on and the other one, it's like, well, not really.
Okay, well, so let me ask you this. Is a clone you?
No.
Right. I think
because a twin's not you either.
But the backup of you is more you than if I literally made another you. Because who you are isn't just like your body.
Right.
Right. So it's your mind, and you can't copy that. You can't clone somebody's mind. You can't clone their experiences or what led them to be. You can't clone the nurture. You can clone the nature. You can't clone the nurture. Sure. This lets you do that.
Yeah, but
if I backed up my mind and then I was in a computer, because then ethically, I think you would have to end your physical life if you did that. It can't be two of you.
But this is a classic philosophical conundrum. Like, okay, imagine that somebody invents a teleportation device, right? And it's like the Fly,
like the Prestige.
Right? You have two pods. It's the Prestige. Yeah, you have two pods, and I walk into one, and it scans my entire body down to the atom, right, down to the quarks inside of the atoms, right?
Right.
And it creates an exact duplicate of that in the other pod, and then at the moment of creation over there, it instantaneously vaporizes me in the first pod, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is the person that walks out of pod B, is that Rob?
Yes.
Is that me?
Yeah. Yes.
See, I say it's not.
It's well, like I was saying earlier, it isn't you literally 100%, but for all intents and purposes, it's you. All the people in your life that get something from knowing Rob, whether that's love, affection, advice, labor, whatever, they can still get all the same things. So
then let me ask you this. Let's say there's a malfunction.
Okay.
And I step into pod A. It scans me, reproduces me, a duplicate of me in pod B. But the function in pod A that's supposed to vaporize me does not trigger. So now I walk out of pod A and pod B at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Is pod B still is the person who came out of pod B still me?
Yes.
So now there's two of them.
They're you, and they're more deserving of being alive than the person that walked out of pod A. Because we got to kill one of y'all. Right? Because the thing is, the dude that walked into pod A intended to die. You shouldn't be here. You're a mistake. The dude that walked out of pod B is Rob. The dude that was in pod A, that's old Rob. He's a throwback, a relic.
Well, maybe he's Rob Prime though.
I mean, yeah, maybe.
This is just a copy.
And I'm pretty sure, like, if the copy made a copy and you kept doing that, you probably end up with like a bizarro Rob.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I get what you're saying. I mean, maybe you could make the argument that like you become a little less Rob every time you. So maybe the pod A Rob is prime Rob, and you get a little less Rob. Like the first copy is a molecule off. Mm-hmm. And then the second copy's 2 and so forth. And so, yeah, you would end up being in pretty bad shape by the time you got to like the 1,000th copy.
Did you ever read X Factor, the comic X Factor?
No.
With it's probably X-Men or whatever, but it's Jamie Madrox, Multiple Man.
I hate that fucking card in Marvel Snap, by the way.
It's a great card. But Multiple Man, his power set is that he can convert like concussive energy or physical damage or whatever into copies of himself. So look, if you punch him, then like another Multiple Man will bloop out of him.
Right.
Right. And so if he's in a fight, he very quickly multiplies into a bunch of copies of himself. Right.
But is the new guy damaged as well?
No, because it kind of like it converts the energy that would have damaged him into like the energy. It's kind of like a Bishop, how like Bishop can absorb energy and like blast it out of his fists.
Right.
Or whatever. Anyway, so originally with Multiple Man, that was just his power, like whatever, like X-Men, every X-Men has to have like a unique power or whatever. He eventually became like an awesome character when he was in X Factor because they introduced this thing where it wasn't a degraded version of him, but different copies of him had slightly different personalities. And
oh shit!
They discovered that the reason why is because he wasn't actually creating those copies. Those copies are coming from alternate universes where he lived a slightly different life. So they're genetically identical to him, but they might have different abilities or expertise or knowledge.
So wait a minute, if you punch Multiple Man, like he doesn't reabsorb the copies?
He can reabsorb the copies, but he doesn't do it automatically. And there's an amazing story where.
So I'd imagine one of the Multiple Mans will probably not want to go back to their.
Yes, there have been. There was one story in X Factor where there was a copy of Multiple Man that like didn't want to be a superhero or whatever, so he went off and he just like became a normal civilian. Like he had like a wife and a family and all this kind of stuff, and and the whole story is like you're just seeing like a normal day in this guy's life, and you're like, why are we seeing this? And at the end of it, because there's this subplot happening in the background where Multiple Man like needed to reabsorb his copies, he just walks up and he's like bloop, and just like erase this dude from the world, and like essentially orphaned this he widowed his own wife and he orphaned his child because the Jamie Madrox Prime had to like reabsorb all his copies.
So what stops Multiple Man from getting pulled into another dimension?
There's some bullshit comic book reason
Okay.
for it, like he's the prime timeline or something.
Right.
Yeah. Some horseshit multiverse argument that this is the real timeline or something. I don't know.
This has been such a heavy episode. Let's do one light thing and before we go. All right. One fuck, nothing's light anymore. You sent me one that I was like, oh, that's great. Was it like, can plants see?
Oh, can plants see? I think I also sent you one about was there like a cocaine plant or something?
Oh, taking hydrocortisone immediately after a traumatic event may help prevent. No, that's.
Oh, you know what? There is a. Let me. There's one funny story.
Oh yeah, is it the on the Weird and Stupid?
There's a genetically modified. Did I send you this one? Genetically modified tobacco plant produces cocaine in its leaves.
No. Whereabouts?
Here, I'll send this to you. Let's see.
Yeah, cocaine doesn't really do anything for me though. But I know some people that would be real excited about that. That's like I know a lot of people are like, that's my two favorite things.
We need to do more scientific research on I understand why it's difficult, but on combinations of drugs. Because there's some drugs that are shit by themselves but are great in combination, and then there's some drugs that are great by themselves, or vice versa, that are shit by themselves, great in combination, or great by themselves and shit in combination.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Like alcohol and weed is a match made in heaven.
Yeah, you know what's wild is a friend of mine the other night was on shrooms and cocaine. I was like, I don't think you should do those together.
No, that seems like a bad.
Yeah, because you know you're doing some bad shit when like two pretty common drugs, when their combination doesn't have a nickname. You know what I mean? Because I think, because if you do Molly and one thing, it's candy flipping. I think if you do Molly and shrooms, it's Jedi mind trick or something like that. But if you do cocaine and shrooms, there's not a name for that. At least not that I know of. Why does the sound keep going out? It's I think it's my headphones and not the mic. But let me look it up though to make sure. Cocaine and shrooms.
No, man, I'm not seeing anything.
I don't see anything. Yeah. Let me add nickname to the search.
Can taking a hallucinogen curb cocaine use?
Well, of course.
Probably.
That's what I was just saying earlier. Is a lot of people I know have quit smoking after. That's what I said on the last episode. A lot of people I know have quit smoking after shroom trips. But unlike with alcohol and nicotine, there's not a pharmacological option available to individuals addicted to cocaine to help them stop using the drug. However, but there's a natural solution to that. It's like you either run out of money or you die. Yeah, man, the economy's so bad, cokeheads are now having to smoke crack. It's unbelievable. We aren't advocating for everyone to go out and do it. Why not? See, man, you know what? I hate it. Because shit like that reminds me of like how Joe Biden, how like, despite all the evidence and research and anecdotal tales and all this other stuff, this motherfucker just, with regards to marijuana, he can just be like, yeah, I just can't. It's like some of these old fucks are just stuck in the past, and the people they care about impressing are all 70 years old. So they're just like, can't do the weed, can't legalize the weed, can't do that. I'm surprised Trump didn't do it, because it would have it would have endeared him to a lot of people. It would have made a lot of people confused about how much to hate the motherfucker.
That's true.
You know?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
But the problem is his core demographic is old white people, and old white people don't like weed. Well, old white people don't like weed being legal. A lot of them like weed.
That's my
anyway.
point.
They
It's
just
like,
know
bro,
that they're not going to get arrested for it.
yeah, every city I've been to runs on drugs.
Yeah.
Society runs on drugs, on people being able to feel how they want to feel when they want to.
Well, there's an incredible, one of the best bits ever by Bill Hicks about once you realize how capitalism uses drugs, then you understand why the drugs that are legal and why the ones that are illegal are illegal.
Yeah, it's all money.
Yeah, it's all money, and it's all the stuff that will make you more productive tends to be legal.
Well, you know where I'm going to be productive this weekend, Rob?
Where's that?
Or this coming week is actually, I don't even know when this is coming out.
This is going to come out next week, so you'll be in Davenport?
I'll be in Davenport, Iowa next week. One night only, December 10th at the Rhythm City Casino. And then followed that 2 weeks later, Scottsdale, Arizona, Huntsville, Alabama, Nashville, Tennessee, and New York City.
New York City.
New York City. So go to my website, briansimpsoncomedy.com for tickets. Go to my socials, BS Comedian. I'm also on TikTok now. Yeah, 2 days on now it's been like 4 days on TikTok. They immediately banned the audio from one of my jokes I posted. My very first video. They banned the audio and I'm pretty sure it's because I say nigga in the first 5 seconds, and then I appealed and I won. And they put it back.
The system works.
Yeah, but because I'm not sure if they were like, oh, this is a black person saying nigga, or if they were like, he's shitting on cops, so it's cool. You know? Mm-hmm. Because it's a very, very tricky place, TikTok. You know, and the rules for like, because I posted one video, it went not even viral, but it's already up to close to 1 million views. And I posted another video.
Crazy, but TikTok, the numbers don't even make any sense to me, because it's like, if you get 1 million views on YouTube for something, then that's something.
Right.
If you get 1 million views on TikTok, it's like, apparently that ain't shit.
Well, what is my thing? I got almost 1 million views on the first one. And the second one is now up to like 750,000. And then I posted a third one, 500. Mm-hmm. You know, it's like, it's all about the algorithm showing your video to people and like what people see and, you know, your subscribers. Because the thing is, what I don't get is, because it's almost now 10,000 followers, why don't you at least show it to them? Right. Like, I shouldn't have any videos below the amount of followers I have.
Right.
It doesn't make any sense. So anyway, but I refuse to be a slave to the algorithm. Like, I'm not going to be like, oh, well, you have to, you know, put it in this font and wake up at, you know, you have to make sure you post it exactly 5 minutes after midnight to maximize. Fuck all of that. It's like, I'm gonna post when I have time, and when I don't, I won't. That, you know, but I can't, because I don't even want to be on TikTok, because there's one more fucking thing I have to worry about. And I don't want to have to hire a social media manager, because then it's not even me. So it's not authentic, you know? So it's I don't know. It's just a lot. And
comedians are in that donut hole, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like,
we have to do it.
If you're just a normal person, then you have like 300 followers and you just put out whatever you want. And if you're Chris Evans or whatever, then you just pay for other people to do that, and nobody even knows what your real TikTok is or your real Instagram.
And then there are some people that, like, they're content creators. Like, that's what they do for money. And so they have to do all of that shit, because that's how they make money. You know? Yeah. It's wild. YouTube is the freest I think YouTube is the best social media platform.
I mean, it's definitely the one that I spend the most time on. I
spend the most time on it. They have the least bullshit rules. I mean, they're weird about monetization and stuff like that. You know, it's not like they're completely free of their own bullshit. But
they also need to fix their like takedown. The way there's like some trolling shit that people can do to stifle discussion, you know? So like if you if you criticize certain, I mean, even certain stand-up comedians, let's say, then they will copyright strike your content, even though it's very clearly within fair use. But that's a topic for another day.
It is. Thank y'all for tuning in. I'll see y'all motherfuckers next week.